2017. And we'll have a roll call of the directors.
Alice,
Here.
Barnes,
Here.
Hewis,
Here.
Foreman,
Here.
Kaiser,
Here.
Kramer,
Here.
Peel, Tomchak, Zero,
Here.
all present except Peel and Tomchak.
We'll have the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4, approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion on the floor by Diane Gorman and a second by Mark Hewis. All in favor? Or-
Aye.
Is there any other discussion? Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes, Special Board of Education, February 21, 2017. Regular Board of Education meeting, February 21, 2017. Is there,
I'll make the motion to approve both 5A and 5B.
we have a motion on the floor by Diane Gorman and a second by Carolyn Kramer. Is there any other discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public forum. The public forum provides the public with the opportunity to ask questions about or address issues included on the school board meeting agenda. General operating rules of the public forum will be determined by the board president once the number of people wishing to speak is identified on the date of the meeting. Prior to addressing the board, please clearly state your name and your address. Is there anybody wishing to address the board? Seeing none, we'll move on. Review and discussion of Neoli 8,000 and 9,000 administrative policies.
Okay, you're on your last leg of policies here. And went through a number of them. I have not gotten comments, so from anybody? And in the past, Kevin had a couple of things, but I did not get sent, so let's talk.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'll go first.
We'll go all the way down.
Okay. Okay, 8450. My question only on that one is, what currently, maybe adding to the policy the way it is stated right now, but what is our protocol for notifications?
Sorry, Diane.
That's okay, that's okay.
8450?
Yep.
Control of casual contact communicable diseases?
Yep.
How do we notify?
Yeah.
Generally, the nurse will contact me, and she works with the county department, and then they send out that communication to the grade level of what it, or the classroom of where it's occurring. And then when we have multiple, so we may have like siblings, or we may have multiple cases, then she'll notify generally that classroom.
Okay.
Very rarely have we notified the entire school. Sometimes there has been, but generally she tries to keep it specific to that. That's
Okay.
it. So the communication comes out from Sue Olcamp, our school nurse.
Got it. Okay. And I was gonna keep going then on 8600. I'm a little familiar with that one, with the city students requesting for busing. It doesn't have, we currently have like a pay for transportation and we have a policy, which is our 751E, I believe. Is that no longer gonna be part, or are we just
That
gonna?
would be a guideline or a rule.
Okay.
So the actual details, because that continually changes, that way you don't have to go back to the policy.
Okay,
So you can have a policy that oversees it, and then the guidelines, Brent will go through and write the guidelines.
so there'll be something in here somewhere, like a breakdown
It'll
of
be a
it.
guideline,
Okay,
but
okay.
guideline is not something that has to come to the board then, as far as that annual. So when things change annually with that price,
Yep.
pretty sure,
I think the
if you
price
remember
hasn't
that
changed
discussion,
in a long time.
in a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. Because the only other thing then, you've got your, under the same 8,600 of the walkers and the riders,
Uh-huh,
and we only listed as the K kindergartners. We don't have anything about the 4K students that are transported.
okay.
So if you don't want us to pick them up anymore.
No, that is definitely not the case. 8601, I'll ask, Brent about the guidelines.
Yeah, and then the only, because on there it says like you don't want them to, now I think, because it's kind of puts them together in the same category, just it's called walkers and riders. And I know, I just wanted to make sure, because I was looking at that and it says, when it says, you know, basically I would think if you're still living within the city and it's not deemed hazardous,
Right,
they have to
Right.
walk, whether it's not, whether it's 0.2 of a mile or not. Correct?
so he's missing the K, he's missing,
The 4K.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean,
Yeah.
because this, it doesn't matter if you're over a mile within the city, you're still within the city limits, they have to, unless it's deemed hazardous. Got it, okay.
Yeah.
So like, if you live behind Charlie's, you go to elementary school, you get picked up
Yeah, 'cause that's in the
2
town.
blocks, right?
That's in the town.
So like, you live in
Yeah,
my
that's
neighborhood,
what
you got a
it
mile
is.
to go to the elementary school, you have to walk.
You're within the city.
So even though you're farther away,
it's not necessarily the distance as it is if there's a hazard.
Right.
So you could actually be closer from one direction, but if you're crossing a highway to get there, just, that's kind of how the.
I believe the only thing I remember that's deemed hazardous within our area is if you're across the bridge.
Yeah,
so like in my neighborhood, you got to walk a mile and a half, whatever it is, like a
Yep.
mile and a quarter. But otherwise you live there, you're 2 blocks away, and you just cross.
Right.
yeah,
So that's all I had.
okay. So we've got to add the K and then
The
I'm
4K.
wondering about the guidelines.
Yep, exactly.
Is there anybody else that has any?
So how do we 153, when do we consider that hazardous, if the kid had to cross?
It is.
Well,
153 is, that's why you
Yep.
pick up just down here, these kids are
So
bused.
in my neighborhood, if you'd have to come from my side of town,
Uh-huh.
to get to the elementary school, you'd have to cross somewhere. Would that be considered hazardous?
I don't think it is.
right. Because if I read, because at one of the bottom of the policies, it said what you, it was like the DPI, PI-7, it said basically, in order to look at what's deemed hazardous, there's a kind of a lot of loopholes you have to kind of go through. You have to, I think it starts with the board level, the board has to look at it, then contact the sheriff's department. Sheriff's gonna come and do a report on it, and then it's kind of like a, get the ball rolling type thing.
They'll do a traffic count too, I think.
Yeah, something to that effect,
I
yep.
can tell you that in Wausau, many of the roads that are deemed hazardous right now, and they're redistricting as a result of that, like Stewart Avenue, because you have multiple lanes going each direction. South Third Avenue on the south end of town, where you have 2 lanes going in the same direction. Thomas Street is about to be deemed dangerous because of the amount of traffic and that they're adding lanes there and during construction. And the only alternative to busing is that temporary crossing guard at those locations, which then mitigates the hazard. Or at least those are the conversations we have all the crossing guards.
But if I remember correctly, and I don't, when my kids were in school, we did have a board meeting so that at the time it was just kindergartners could get bused. So if anybody truly, I believe, does have issues, they bring it to the board addresses it, and we can carry on from there, right, Ann? That's what I thought. So you get that, we can decide.
Anyone else have any issues?
I don't want you.
If not, we'll move on. To item 8. Discussion and possible decision approval of the first reading of the Neola bylaws and 1,000 to 9,000 Neola policy.
You look for a motion? I'll make a motion if you're first reading.
We have a motion on the floor by Matt Barnes and a second by Caroline Kramer. Is there any other discussion?
The only thing is with some of the policies that we discussed are bringing back, before they come back for the second approval, we relook some of the ones that we talked about earlier.
Sure, so, there were, with Kevin being absent, he had a couple things
Yep.
that he wanted, like, and I could just go through those quickly, and if you want to, we could go through those right now, because he had a few that he wanted some wording changed, and I'm not sure if I was trying to decide, should I bring them forward? They were in that shared, document with his questions. Do you wanna just do a couple of them?
Sure.
Okay. One of them was the public participation at board meetings, which is 167.3. One of the comments from Kevin was that he would like the public participation to be changed to 2 minutes and/or to follow what we currently have. This is comment.
I don't know, 2 minutes.
2 minutes
I
ain't
was gonna
much.
say, yeah, 3
Yeah.
minutes is fine, I guess, but I agree with the part of it should be on topic, more or less.
Hold people accountable. I think he just said, if we don't change it, we should follow it. Was his comment.
Follow, yes.
Okay.
I think there are times where individuals in our community would be providing information that's really valid to us. And so I think there still has to be an out to not be like, have the kitchen timer go off and ding, you're done, mid-sentence, you're not allowed to say another word. So I'm in favor of the president of the board having the ability to extend that time at their discretion.
Sure. Yep.
Just for those good points. Okay. But I don't want it to seem like that, picking and choosing, yeah, well.
Right.
Well, that's what the benefit of being the president is. You got the gavel and you,
I usually, I give my finger one finger. Oh, yeah,
you get the finger sometimes too.
I just kind of, get their
I
attention.
mean, if somebody's rambling and they just keep circling back to the same information, I get it, you cut them off, you say thanks for your input, but if somebody's still making valid points and it's relevant to this board, I have no problem if you give someone an extra 2 minutes.
So
We're
that was,
usually not pressed for time as a result of the public forum, so use
If somebody
discretion.
shows up, they should be able to speak.
the next one that he brought up was the vacancies, and this is a new policy that we have just recently done about how we fill board vacancies. So all of you have been a part of adopting and doing this, and we actually use this in twice now. We've used this to fill vacancies. One of the questions that Kevin had is that he would like it to be an open meeting, but he would like the candidates to not be a part of it, meaning that you call in one at a time. So so you can't have it both ways. If it's an open meeting, everybody gets to be in the open meeting, and the board agreed that we would do the interviews and do the process in an open meeting. You can discuss in closed meeting, but if it's an open meeting, I couldn't say, Nancy, you can be here, but Brady, you can't be here. It's an open meeting, so.
Just so I understand you correctly, in an interview setting like that, it would be a violation of the law to sequester the other candidates
Correct,
prior to their interview?
Correct, that's what the attorney said. It's either an open meeting or a closed meeting. If it's open, I can't say Nancy has to leave, Brady gets to stay. I can't choose.
I can tell you that through the last process, that I'm probably, I'm the only one here that went through an appointment process and interviewed with you all. I think the idea that I went last, or close to last, and that was a benefit. I leaned over to Linda Mauer and I said, thanks for all the good answers. I topped and add a little. And we joked about it, but the fact is, in what other setting are you gonna apply for a job or position where that's the case? I would suggest to you that it's better in closed session and sequestered to interviewing candidates and get from each of them without hearing the other answers. I think that's a better system.
Well, one of the things about choosing a board candidate, and this is why we went to the policy that we did, is because it's a very unique opportunity when they are not voted by the public, because generally your position is by the public. We wanted it to be as transparent as a process as possible. So we wanted the questions to be out in the open, and we wanted everybody to see that, because this is the only time where the public doesn't have a chance to vote a candidate in. And we in no way wanted to make that a secret sort of a thing, just from the board's perspective. We wanted that as open as possible, fully understanding that it does put the candidates in a little bit of a predicament, because you do hear each other's answers. But generally, these positions are voted on by the community. So I think the transparency is what we really wanted, which is why we went to open.
In the alternative then, I could see a process of, here are questions from the board to the candidates, and have them respond prior to that meeting in writing, and then wait. There's an interview component, and then there's the answers to the questions, and the two can blend together.
You could definitely give everybody the questions beforehand. You could definitely do that, and then everybody's on the same playing field, you know what I mean? If you want to make sure that all candidates are on the same playing field, you could definitely do that. We also drew straws to see who went first.
Well, I thought that was fair.
Yeah.
Just that, you know, you would definitely have some people that might have a really good idea of point, and if they go first, then everybody else is like lacking. I also feel that way, and I'm not sure we're getting the true feelings of those individuals, but if you ask for answers to certain questions on issues in writing ahead of time, I'm not asking anybody to write a book, but I think that's a reasonable expectation. Then you get their individual perspectives on these topics.
And I knew previously there was a couple different ways that we used to do it as well, and there would be an opportunity where candidates would apply for the position. There would be a list of questions that they would answer. Then there was like a subcommittee of the full board that met with the candidates, looked over the questions, and they would make a recommendation to the full board. And they met with those people one-on-one in like a closed type situation. So it kind of takes away from what you were talking about earlier. So in other words, I probably, maybe wouldn't have gotten in with all those cheat answers.
Maybe. I work with what's handed to me.
So I mean, I know we've done it a couple of different ways prior to that. I mean, I like what you're saying, and I understand, what Ann's saying as well.
Doesn't happen very often.
No.
It
I was gonna
definitely does
say, it
happen,
really
and
doesn't.
generally, you're voted by your constituents. We've all gone through elections, so.
And I went through several different times. First time I come on, they would just welcome me with open arms. And the next time I filled out a questionnaire, and the next time,
Yeah, so it's just always moving.
always.
I mean, it's a great problem to have, that there would be more than one community member that would be interested in serving on the board. So.
Okay. Then what do we
That's-
decide? Are we going to have a question, send them a
Sure, we
form?
can absolutely, as we're filling the vacancy, we have the evaluation may include, each candidate shall be given an opportunity to present a statement on their behalf and respond to questions from board members. Nothing in the policy says that those questions cannot be given to them ahead of time, so if you so choose to do that, you could certainly do that and still be within the realm of your policy.
Okay.
Several other things we had clarified, some was commas, periods, and things like that within the state statute. And we don't change that, we just go with what the state statute has. Another one was to change some wording, and the policy was confused, so that's not applicable.
I do have a question on the term, 142.3. The way it reads, the term of each board member shall be 3 years, commencing on the fourth Monday in April, and shall continue until a successor is elected and qualified, or until a vacancy occurs. Does that mean we're a 7-person board from April 4th through the fourth Monday in April, if Matt and Mark weren't reelected? Or does the term really run until the night of the reorganization meeting?
Well, that's what I thought.
That's not how it reads, right?
No. It says successor is elected. I don't know if I like the idea of becoming a 7-person board. And it's still an odd number.
I don't think, it's a legitimate question, but I don't think we really ever have done any business in that 2-week time.
I think this is straight from the statute.
We are doing some business in April that we
Yeah.
need to have prepared. Matt's been part of that business. Probably gonna look at composition of, it's the school perception survey, the prep work for it. That's the only reason I bring it up. And if that's
On the law.
the way it is, it's the way it is.
Nothing precludes you from not having another meeting there. Do you know what I mean? If you want to get some work done, nothing
Well, but
precludes
if
us from never,
if
not,
you're not a
from
board-
meeting.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Between the,
right, but it's the composition of the sub-team that's involved in it.
no, I'm saying,
I'm
so
not
we
board
could
member.
meet before then. If you, do you know what I mean? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
I can't, but go ahead.
Sorry, okay. I
You
just
can
thought
meet
if you
for
want to get
Thursday.
something done before. And, again, these policies aren't, this is not in effect.
Yes, correct.
Right.
No, but
we
I
don't
guess I'm not sure how our current policy reads. Sure. No big deal.
Okay.
You could be in a situation, though, the way this reads, where how many seats could be open at one time?
3, I
3 or
think,
4?
3 at the most. Times 3 up for the election.
So you could be in a situation where you have a 6-person board for a 3-week period of time. And that could create an issue at some point.
So then you just have the meeting earlier and swear them
Possibly.
in, if it's a, because then you're full board. There's nothing stopping.
Yeah, I don't know what the,
Yeah, what just.
I will check on that.
I think
Yeah.
Bring that back.
Isn't the term until the fourth Monday?
It doesn't read that way.
Amend
Until a
scene on the
successor is elected. So I would think that means the 4th for this year.
Well, there is, I mean,
Fourth Monday.
the reorganization meeting is on the fourth Monday.
Right, but you have the
So it
election
doesn't
on the
commence.
4th of April, when a successor is elected.
So it's not leaving room for a lame duck session of 3 weeks, right?
I mean, it's not a big deal, but it possibly could become a big deal. It's just not real clean, the start-stop, and it could be cleaner. And this topic's taken way too much time already, so
Okay,
look into it and move on.
I will. All right. That's all I got.
Okay, is there any other discussion?
Question.
Okay, we call for the question. You have a second? Oh, there is a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item 9, special presentation, and I see RL, district goal and update. Well, Richard, I just put your initials out there. You're the one that's going to do it.
Works for me.
As you have seen, really since December, we've had an update on where we are with what the focus and what our goals are for the school year. We've had a technology update, we've had each school team and school improvement team share with you an update and on where our goals are. We wanted to just take a look at currently, our special education team also presented, but tonight, Mr. Lind is going to share with us an update specifically from the goals and what relates to your area.
And how things flow out. And I've got a lot of different examples of things in here. I don't have examples of everything that we've done over the last year in the district because there's a limited amount of time. But if you have other questions you want to follow up in particular areas, let me know, and I'd be glad to sit down with you or bring anything else to the board. But as we go through, you know, we've talked about the district focus quite a bit related to student achievement and team development. And I wanted to make sure you understood how much we appreciate the things we put in place here that have allowed a lot of the curriculum work to happen. Without our 3-day data retreat, for example, I know some of you stopped by and took part in that, we wouldn't have the ability to sit down with all of our administrative team and 17 leaders in each building and identify the goals that we want to establish for student learning at each level. We wouldn't have the data retreat if we didn't have a structure of teams, which you've been able to support, you know, both financially and with some of the calendar changes. The Monday nights, changing 3 days of full in-service and adding an hour, hour and a half to our Monday meetings 3 times a month for teachers to focus on their professional development and student growth has been incredibly powerful. And I just wanted to say thank you and remember, none of this work, or I should say very little of this work, could have happened at the speed we've been able to progress without those structures being in place. So through the actions of the board 3 years ago and again last year and continuing, I just want to thank you personally for allowing that work to be supported the way you have, because it's allowed us to get a lot of wonderful things done in the district. I have started out with, you know, every yellow spot is a highlight, you know, the teamwork, and we've got examples of, just a quick example of, these are the K-12 meetings or the 1-2 meetings or the 5-12 meetings that happen in our district. And one of the things I do is keep track of each of these agendas. So, you know, if Ann clicks on running agenda, grades K1, we can go to, you know, hopefully when this opens, what they do, and we can follow along their progress throughout the year. I check that, or the team leaders check that, Ann checks that, to see where we're going with what's been happening for.
It's not on.
There we go. There we go. So, as a spot, you'll see, you know, Katie and her team have identified, we have a very common agenda. The power of that has been very helpful, restating our shared mission, and we can go through and see who's been doing what, how they've progressed, what goals they set for themselves, how they're looking at student data. You know, we have links to links to links to links, which, depending upon your comfort level, is well within or outside your comfort zone, but it helps us keep things organized. So that's one of the areas that we work in. Those are the running agendas. Some folks prefer just individual agendas, but these are all of our teams that meet currently in the district at least one time a month for an hour to an hour and a half, setting goals. Now, that's one of our 3 Monday meetings. Our curriculum work has really got going. I just brought up one example of how we track some of that in the district. So as this goes through, you see we have 3 tabs across the bottom. Keep track of the elementary school, middle school, high school by grade level and or team, and keep track monthly of what they've been working on by month. We get this information from their agendas, so our 21 team leaders send the agendas to me, or they link them in the document. We go in and take a look. Okay, they're identifying power standards in 9 through 11 in ELA. We have our science folks started looking at some different learning targets with the reproduction module specific to a particular unit, just to kind of track where we're at and help us identify what additional support some of our teams may need to keep progressing in their work.
This is a really big goal. So when you say we're gonna take our curriculum, we're gonna align it to the Wisconsin Model Academic Standards, keeping track of all that's a really big deal. So the work that Dick has done, he's an incredibly analytical mind. And so, first of all, you design the structure so that the teams have goals, they have the same mission, they all have very focused work that they're doing. Not only that, but then we set a goal to we really want to align that to the Wisconsin Model Academic Standards, so he tracks that.
If we go into this English language arts link real quick, this is what one part of what our second grade team does, and all our grade level teams are working on the same type documents. We've laid out, this is for their English language arts, their reading and writing courses. So we lay out a basic timeline, and then that team has worked through module 1. You'll see becoming independent as you scroll down on this 26-page document. We have the big questions, you know, what do we want independent readers and writers to do? Why is it important to build stamina in reading and writing? How do reading preferences help us learn about each other? These essential questions identify what our teachers help ground themselves in. So no matter what unit you're teaching, hey, what do independent readers and writers do? We're not focused on specific content. This is more the big idea. And then as we go through, it gets more specific with content. How can I use the reading strategies, identify those, standard outcomes, shared outcomes among all of our teachers and our students. And then they link in rubrics that they use to assess, Lucy Calkins program that we're using for writing, for example, at the elementary school, the different strands and all the resources. So when this is done, it's a living document with our second grade team. I was meeting with Andrea today, and she indicated, you know, I don't think this work ever gets done because we find something new, we add it, so we just keep modifying and changing certain things to highlight because they want to take a closer look at for the future. So this is one way that we track, this is ultimately how we track our curriculum as we create it and what happens within our grade level teams.
And the reason it's so important to know those standards, right, is because at grades, they're gonna take a state assessment. Those state assessments measure how our kids are doing on standards. So say we notice in some of our state assessments, our kids aren't doing so well. We'll go back to the teachers and we'll say, how often are you teaching it? What did your local assessment say about that standard? Could we have predicted that this is happening? And you know, maybe instead of doing that during September and October, we do that standard right before our testing. I mean, to make it that simple is a bit of a stretch, but that's what we're looking at. So we want to be able to really understand where the standards are taught, how our students are performing, what we're doing and how we're reacting to the assessments that we see, so that we're able to improve their student learning.
We're getting to the point, you know, another way to use what Ann just said in a slightly different analogy, we're getting to the point where we can use our state assessments as game day.
Yeah.
Where everything we do over the course of this gets us ready for game day, and we can take a look at that state assessment when it comes out. We get those results back midsummer. Like, great, how we do during the game? We did well, we did well, we did well. We need a little work here, go back and adjust, go back into this curriculum document, so we need to add, subtract, change, whatever it happens to be. How student learning is...
Are you rigorous?
How student learning is assessed, just one last tie. From that second grade then, we've developed, our grade level teams developed, and Brady and his team have been great helping us figure out how to get this in Skyward. Standards-based report cards. Because we've had those standards identified, now let's report it out, which, you know, is just a powerful way to restate again what we've done, along with all the assessments that are used in a particular area. So, okay, in Reading Language Arts 2.3, here's our rubric, it's linked to the standards-based report card, which goes back to that curriculum document. So a lot of it's been tying the work that our folks are doing together. We talked about rigorous and relevant coursework. I shared some of this with you last time I did a quick presentation. Our dual credit advanced placement offerings. One of the things coming up later in your agenda tonight is from the question from the board, how do our kids do on our AP test, for example? How many kids are engaged? We have our dual credit offerings. I shared this with you a month or so ago, and our number of classes have increased. Our student enrollment in AP and dual credit have both increased. I'm not as concerned about how our students do on an AP exam as I would be about how many kids we have taking AP classes. And I don't want you to misunderstand that. I think it's important that students do well on an AP exam, but if it comes down to us being super selective in students taking AP chemistry, for example, so we know that if we just get these 8 kids in here, they're all gonna get 4s and 5s, that's great. But how do we balance that with the fact that maybe 25 kids should be taking an AP chemistry class because they might end up in chemistry someday where they didn't know it. So how do you balance that rigor? So I don't I don't want to de-emphasize the importance of doing well on the exam, but I don't want to overemphasize it either, if that makes sense. Student participation, really tough coursework, is a great place for us to be, and that's one of the things we're trying to increase through our dual credit and advanced placement course offerings. Having more students take those classes as opposed to just, a fewer kids. Quick example of differentiated learned reading materials, and this is a common sight for elementary teachers that are here. You've seen the shared book room, which looks like an absolute shared book room, but these tubs represent, you see the M, N, O, P, Q, R. When Katie and her team have gone through, for example, and showed the reading data and how many kids hit their grade level benchmarks, and our grade level benchmark is an O, what does that mean? That means that our students in the O can read the materials and understand them out of the O pile, as opposed to out of the T pile or out of the M pile. And we might have a second grade class that comes in and some kids are taking books out of the C pile. Other kids may be taking books out of the Q or the R pile. But we allow our students to read at the level where they understand what they're doing and they're stretched just a little bit. And that's one of the reasons that those goals that they set way back in August, they can be so successful with those because they're fitting the reading materials to the student and allowing them to get the information where they're at. Because if a book is too easy or too hard, you may get bored or you start to lose some of that interest in it. You talked about some of the project-based learning that's going on, and we have kids studying statistics by building carnival games, throwing balls at different size holes and trying to predict and or collect data so that they can predict how often it's going to fall through a particular hole. You scroll down a little bit, we have more of the carnival games in math, for example, where again they're building these games and then they're trying to collect enough information so they can say what are the odds that this next thing's going to happen, work with probability and statistics. Done a little bit more, we've got this young lady is building an artificial hand for one of our courses. We didn't have a 3D printer in the district that was large enough, but we will have. That was large enough to print these up. They're actually building prosthetic hands for children that have either were born without a hand or have been victims of, we have kids that live in countries where they're picking up bombs and are losing limbs. So these were built here and then they're shipped off through this company called Enabling the Future, and distributed to kids all over the world. But yeah, we build prostheses here. It's just kind of a project-based learning. And the last picture, I have kids are building solar race cars. Change different variables, the tilt of the solar panel, the wheel set, what they use for wheels, how they lubricate it, the size, all those different variables. Collect information on how they work. Share that with everyone, and then students try to build the car that's going to perform the best based on everybody's work. So just a few quick examples of some of the project-based learning. You've heard a lot about our closing achievement gaps at the middle and high schools. I've got the middle school schedule, and every place you see a color are classes that years ago would have been either a pull-out class or classroom instruction without any additional support. These are now classes that we're supporting with both a special ed or a gifted and talented teacher in with a regular classroom teacher, a content area specialist. So we can not only provide the solid math or English or science instruction, but we can also have those teachers supported by people that specialize in gifted education or in special education and say, look, I know what you're trying to do, great idea, but with this group of students, oh, sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
This group of students need a little bit different instructional strategy. In math, we talk about RTI, response to intervention, what we do for those students that are struggling. When this sheet loads, it takes 5 or 6 seconds. It's kind of a big deal. Every student at grade 2, I try to be consistent with the grade level tonight just to give you an idea of the same level of student. Every student answers a large variety of questions, and we scroll down to the bottom of the sheet, you'll see the student's total points, 56. That puts them in the grade meeting standard, fantastic. In fact, that's a perfect score, 56 out of 56. Kids that aren't scoring as high as they probably should are identified in yellow. By the same token, red. If we then go to checkup number 1, just click over to checkup 1, these students that have scored we do the same type of thing with another set of criteria and benchmarks to say they're coming out. And then students that end up, volume 2, part 3, please. Students that are seen in need of more continuous support, they're a little bit further behind. That's why there's only, 5 scores here. These students went in, they got special instruction in the areas from those first sheets that they were lower in. So they worked, for example, on solving 20 addition facts within 10 in 2 minutes or less. And this is just answers and some other things. The standard that it addresses, the scoring. So we went from having a classroom of, actually 6 classrooms of approximately 22 students apiece, down to these 5 kids work in these 2 areas. We're still tracking that. We still have one person in charge of a little bit more intensive support, and we go on, identify what they need, put them in another group with a teacher, work with them an extra 20 to 30 minutes a day, 3 to 5 times a week, to try to get everybody up to grade level or beyond as fast as we possibly can, by identifying the specific instruction they need.
So people say, how are you specifically working to close the achievement gaps? What exactly are you doing? You could ask Heather Skutek that, and she'd be able to tell you. I've identified these kids through this assessment, I've done this intervention, kind of to a nauseating thing, right, Heather?
And the challenge part is those groups are continually changing based on where the students are
Right.
after 2 weeks.
But they're much more analytical in their conversation about it. Heather would probably know exactly the amount of kids that aren't meeting that grade level, and then she'll say, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And that should impact their assessment later on, and that's very specifically what I'm doing. So, just kind of a good example of, and that's really just evolved all of your RTI over the last couple of years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been a huge shift.
A lot of work for the classroom teacher, so when the classroom teachers are pretty exhausted, a lot of work for the classroom teacher.
Um,
Oh, do you want me to go back?
no,
Okay.
go on.
So that, our focus was on student achievement. We very specifically set some pretty lofty goals. We did not have documentation of that prior to all of this work, so we just really, we frame the work, but I will tell you that the workhorse is in the teachers that are doing all the work.
Absolutely, it's been, they've done an incredible job of implementing these things.
So how do you change that every year? I mean, say 1 year you're gonna get a class in that needs, how, is this movable? When you get an exceptional class in versus maybe a lower performing class?
Yeah, we,
Heather, let me ask you
You want-
that.
yeah.
So,
How do
Go ahead.
you move that? I mean,
What do you mean by?
well,
moving
because,
what?
I mean, do you challenge a more gifted class versus somebody that's coming in? How do you move it to
Yes.
fit the class of that?
So with the interventions, we identify our bottom students, and so like this year in math, we have students that we only have, that need 2 of us teachers to support them. So we have another teacher that is supporting another group of students, either in a different area or enrichment. So it kind of depends on the grade and what their group is. Sometimes they're able to use a specialist, like gym or music. Sometimes there's another teacher available to work on some of those enrichment opportunities. Other times, they're just working to fill a different gap. So like the assessment might not say that fact fluency was a struggle, but with our classroom observations, we're noticing, you know what, we'd like to give them some more support in that area. So we really we're always having data conversations about what our students need, and bringing that back to the table, and then trying to find different ways to challenge them. And a lot of times in the primary grades, I can speak for, those challenges come within the classroom. So we do a lot of paired work and deeper level questioning. So we really challenge them within the classroom. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
it's
but
a much more science, so
Right.
she may have a class where she's doing a lot of enrichment on, and doesn't have as many gaps.
Right.
You may have a year, and Donna, you probably know that as well, right? There are years you come and go.
It's our interventions, adaptations, modifications, they're all based on student needs. That student need, a high class may be more high-end interventions. A lower class might be more lower one-on-one intervention. So it all depends on the population. That work doesn't change. With the population, it only changes where the needs are. Because
And
we
it's
still
really
meet their needs.
Oh, sorry. And it's really a team effort. Donna's team or Heather's team, they start out with 140 students. So they'll identify the students that show up in red or yellow in each area. And then it's not like Heather does all of her kids and another first grade team member does all of their kids. It's, Heather says, I will take our 6 kids that really need this and I'm gonna work with them. Someone else says, I'll take our 8 kids that need this. So it's far less the way I grew up, which is there's my teacher, there's our 22 kids and we do everything here. It's really a team effort which allows them to divide and conquer some of that work.
And to give that additional support
and
to some of the kids.
Right.
It can't, Heather can't do it all when there's a real need for intervention, so.
The sheets have really, how long have we been doing the sheets, the data sheets like this?
This,
It's the first year for math.
yeah, first year for math, but we've been keeping data, for a long time, but
Yeah.
now the intense data to really track it, I'd say the last couple of years.
And that just gives them, it's just kind of like Moneyball, it's another analytical look at how are we improving the performance of our students, and using our teachers to the best of their ability and the time.
Our teachers and resources to the best
Resources,
of their ability
yeah.
too.
Yeah. Student achievement, okay, team development.
Again, and this is just, the teams that meet for the data retreat. I talked about that at the beginning a little bit as an introduction. These are our team leaders, and thank goodness and you for them. They're the ones that are leading a lot of this work and facilitating those meetings. Our student learning data. And again, this is an example of one of the agendas from the data retreat, which is where a lot of this begins. Where they have the team's SLO data, logons to Wise-Local, our data in Google Sheets, ACT scores, all the different places we keep information, and then focus that 3-day retreat around setting goals, and not just setting goals, but how we're going to track those goals over the course of the year, and how often we're going to track those goals. So.
The school improvement plans we went through, and everybody saw those. Each school will do that, close look at student learning data, and they will develop that school improvement, and you listened last time about that. And they created a plan of action to communicate how their actions were contributing to the success of that overall school improvement plan. Very focused, very intentional use of their time and use of the resources to make sure that everything that they're doing is focusing towards the school improvement goal. One thing I really have to commend the teams on, though, is it's not just about the student performance and getting the work done, but it's also, as a team, how are we going to behave together? You guys have values. Each of your teams has values. You have operating procedures and how you're going to act with each other, and which all lead to the school's mission and vision. So.
It is
well
hard
done
work.
teamwork.
It's really
team
hard work.
development.
And wouldn't get done without
That is
those
correct.
21 people and all the people that work with those 21 people. We talked a little bit about, the greater collaboration among all of our teachers that allow, with a schedule that allows people to get together. I mentioned the Monday nights. We've got them set up for PLC, district, or staff meetings. Those are all learning opportunities and sharing opportunities for our staff.
So that changed a
That
few
changed.
years ago. When we started all of our work, we had to have a time frame to get it done. So we took 3 full days of in-service, that used to be 3 full days, sprinkled them throughout the entire calendar. And there's an hour, 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 there's an hour. So we took those 3 days and sprinkled them throughout the year so that we would get the work done.
We have our instructional coaches, building team leaders already talked about, mentors to support our new teachers, and next year, hopefully, our new teachers and first and second year teachers. And as a part of all that, we've had to outline the responsibilities and roles of those leaders, so we developed mentor handbooks and instructional coach handbooks and processes and those things that they go through. It's as creative as I get, as a picture of a tree, so yeah. Analytical maybe, artsy not so much.
Yeah.
But I do use the same font. But other than that, it's about as good as it gets. Yeah.
But with those new roles, we really had to take the time to develop the handbooks and make sure that those roles and responsibilities, and then in addition to that, Dick continues to meet with them throughout the entire school year.
And culminating in a lot of ways with some of this work as an extension, when we get into probably the last, the professional development opportunities. when we look at the work that our teachers are not only engaged with during the time that they're meeting, when we take a look at how that's supported by our compensation model and the amount of time that our teachers are taking beyond and outside of the regular school day. We went over this in the compensation meeting the other morning. A couple were able to attend. If we go down, we've had 653 points completed as of today. Now, remember, each point represents about 10 hours of work on the part of our teachers outside of their contract day. So we're looking at 6,530 hours of work. And when I say this compensation model helps support that, if we were to pay curriculum rate to get that done, that's a significant chunk of change that our teachers are doing to stay where they are in the compensation model, progress in the compensation model. So it's, I think it's been very much a win-win in that our teachers can also focus on what they want to work on, whether it's, you can see the four majors, curriculum instruction, technology. Other are things like PBIS, our positive behavior intervention strategies, and some of those programs. We've got a group at the middle school looking at how they may be able to change the middle school schedule in a year or two to better address student needs and streamline some of the things that go on there, provide the time that we need. And then we track that, several different ways. But often I think as a board you hear about one thing or another thing, and one of the big messages I want to leave you with tonight is that there's so many ways that everything that we've done over the last 2 to 3 years of the structures we've put in place have helped intertwine and lock these systems in between the compensation model and team leaders and mentors and instructional coaches and changing the calendar and all of those different things all blend together to end up being a very different place than it was a few years ago. I think a good place for kids to learn. All right. Questions that you may have?
It's all pretty connected.
Otherwise, you know where I am. I stop by. Somebody said, somebody asked me the other day, so what do you think the most important thing you've been able to do is? It's so hard to answer because you pull one thing else, like taking the domino out of them. When you set them up to tip them over, it's like taking a couple of those dominoes out. It just doesn't work without all those things in place. Thanks for helping us progress with that work by putting some of the things in place that you have. Thanks. Thank you.
And the badges winning Friday?
Will they win?
Yeah, let it-
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, item D, update advanced placement high school course and exams.
So this was from the question that was asked, how many of our students are taking those AP courses? How many are enrolled? The number of students who took the placement exam. Remember, we don't take that placement exam until May. How many of those students who took it received a score of 3 or higher on it? And where are we scheduled to, how many will take it this year? And we're just going to continue to track that data for you.
So what does this mean, the 3 or higher? Does that mean they passed or they got college credit or?
Yes. Can't be Pence, you want me to?
Go ahead.
I'm busy talking.
He's pretty passionate about this.
Kind of an AP guy. A 3 or higher is generally accepted by colleges for college credit, depending on the area you want to go into. For example, if I score a 3 on the AP chemistry exam, but I go to UW Stevens Point and want to be a chemistry major, they'll say, we're not taking any AP scores we want you in our program. If it's an elective, then absolutely we'll give you credit for it. One of the reasons we've made a change that we talked about last month in our dual credit, we want to offer as many AP classes as we have also for dual credit because that gives them automatic credit in the UW system. So,
Which can be great and it can be bad.
It can be great, it can be bad, yeah.
Like I have a daughter who chose not to take the AP credit because she wanted to take the placement exams at UW-Madison when she went to Madison. So some kids don't take it because even though they know that they've done, I can get a 3 and maybe it's great. My daughter went in with 30 credits to UW-Madison. That's great, but at the same time, she's 18, now sitting in classes with juniors and seniors. So I thought that was great. She'd have all these credits and this is awesome and this is great, but again, an 18-year-old girl away from home for the first time, and it wasn't so great that she wasn't in the learning community. She was too far out. So, I mean, you know, then you have the next one, and I say, oh, forget about those AP classes, and you just take those freshman classes with all the rest of the freshmen. It just kind of depends, so parents and students choose to maybe take it or not take it. I don't think it negates the awesome learning that's occurring and the rigor that's occurring in an AP course.
This is the part I'm most interested in tracking as a district. I'm tracking,
Want
how are our
the kids
enrollments? How do we get more kids
try.
to take these
To try
high-end,
it.
very difficult classes, to
Yeah.
believe in themselves to take them? Because
to
if we
take
can
the
go
risk
from-
right now as
Absolutely.
a high school student rather than getting to college and flunking, you know, that's the rigor that you're gonna see when you get college, so that's your experience. Now, do we want this? We want to continue to encourage them to do well, and do we want our kids to score higher? We do. We do. Of the 27, we do want more to do that, but some may not have, you know, that's a
When I
learning
first
process for
came,
you.
One
when I
of the-
first came here 4 years ago, Bob Bach wanted as many kids as possible in there because he knew it was higher level learning. The AP classes are higher level. He said, I don't care if they don't get a 3 or not, I want them in my class. So his percentages weren't extremely high, but the number of kids that he had were the highest. He had the most number of kids that actually got a 3 or higher. But studies show as well that the more kids that are in AP, the more college and career ready they are, the higher they are going to do on the ACT. So we're always encouraging kids to be a part of it. We don't make them be a part of it, but we encourage it.
If you look at the numbers between 15, 16 and 16, 17,
Yeah.
you went from 182 AP classes being taken when you combine them, and this year we're at 118.
Right.
So that's a dramatic reduction.
Yep.
Is that reflective of anything?
Well, we
else?
also have,
We
we
had
had
a graduate
200 and
class-
some odd seniors.
So we had a
last
graduate
year.
class of 194 compared to a graduate class of 150. That didn't help those statistics at all because
So
there's
it's
about
40
40 kids out. Most of them take more than one class. So, you know,
And
Yeah,
most
that's
of
not
our
necessarily-
kids that are taking the classes are seniors. It's really senior driven with some juniors, but we don't have a lot of freshmen or sophomores. Maybe 1 or 2 are taking AP classes.
To this report, maybe what we can do is add what percentage of the senior class that is.
Right.
that would be.
Do you already
Well, I mean,
know
just
how
on face value, you're like, wow, that's a significant
Right.
drop.
And we've increased our dual credit numbers, so a lot of kids are taking the dual credit classes instead of the AP classes.
So dual credit, you don't have to take the exam to
Correct.
get the credit.
So
So,
Google.
so what kind of grade structure is there when you have 11 of 33 kids in English Lit passing the test? Are kids getting C's taking these honors classes or these
This is one
AP
test.
classes?
This
or-
is
This
one
is-
test, so remember,
But
your
isn't it to a
assessments
learning
are.
standard though, and wouldn't you still, if you get an A in the class, wouldn't we expect them to score a 3 or higher? So is there
Maybe.
risk associated with kids
Well-
taking these classes?
Well, some
One of
kids
the-
too, you have to realize, some kids don't do really well on time tests either, where you have to get this test done in this amount of time. Where they're brilliant kids, but they need extra time to do that.
And it
so they might not do
doesn't
either.
hurt them if they get a low score, they still